Good morning and happy Monday, everybody. I feel like Mondays are almost a good thing now as they signify the start of the classic work week and everyone is desperate for real markers of time as this thing goes on. But, we're 4 days away from May 15th, which is exciting and uncertain. Let's see how this develops, and let's remember to continue to be safe and to take care of our immune systems. Now, my guest today is Rabbi Lewis. Rabbi Lewis is the head of Mesorah NJ, which is an organization that seeks to connect young Jewish post-collegiate professionals with each other and with their beautiful heritage. We talk a bit about the shifting of the program online and the Jewish response to this pandemic. I hope you like it. Hello, Rabbi Lewis, and welcome to episode 28 of COVID Chats.
Thank you, Ruben. It's great to be here.
I'm very excited. I'm happy to finally have you on the program. I slipped a little bit on this because I know you reached out to me earlier on, but it's a pleasure to have you here as the head of Mesorah in New Jersey. So I have a bunch of questions for you. And, first I want to just ask, how are you? How are you doing?
Thank God I'm doing well. This COVID thing is a big transition. I kind of see it as a moment of opportunity. The world is changing very rapidly, and when that happens, there's a lot of opportunity. So for me, I've been seeing that. It's kind of very exciting for me. So it's my general outlook. Yeah.
Absolutely. A big moment of change. And, in those moments, certainly there's a lot of opportunity. I think, a lot of people want to make sure that, they seize the opportunity in the best possible way and don't want to be seen as sort of capitalizing on this moment, because obviously it's not, it is a tragedy for many. Of course, there's people like us who maybe haven't been as directly affected. We haven't had COVID and we don't maybe know. I mean, I can't speak for you, but I don't know really anybody who's personally died from the disease. I do know people who have had the disease, and I've had them on the program, but absolutely, there is a lot of opportunity here. So, you run a lot of classes through Mesorah, through the program that you run, and I'm curious, what have been maybe some of the pros and cons of switching online for that?
Yeah, well, we'll start with the cons. It's really tough for me personally, and I think for everyone. You don't have that human contact, obviously, but such a big component of Mesorah was the Shabbat dinners that we used to run. I think you came to one in last year, about a year ago, in Jersey City. We had these big rooftop Shabbats, and in Highland Park, and every week I would have people at my Shabbat table. I mean, Shabbos is such a big part of just of being Jewish, but certainly with what I'm doing. I mean, I'm in Jewish outreach. I reach out to young professionals. Shabbos is like, how can you, when this first thing hit and when we said no more no more in-person events, it's like, what are we going to do for Shabbos? That's impossible. There's no way.
Right.
And so that's been really tough. Not having our weekend getaways. We every couple of months we go on a weekend trip. We go, LA, Miami, whatever. We had a trip planned to Los Angeles in a couple of weeks, which looks like it's not going to be happening. So that's been really, really difficult. At the same time, though, it's presented, as I mentioned, opportunities that we didn't have before. One of the challenges we faced as an outreach organization was actually getting people in the room. And, I was a campus rabbi at Rutgers University for about 15 years. And there you had a built-in social network system where people, roll out of their dorm rooms and, 3-minute walk to your event, and that's it. They're there, free food. It's a no-brainer. It's no problem. It's a challenge in the young professional world to get people, especially if you're not centralized in one little locale. Like for my colleagues in New York City, it's a bit easier because everyone's there. Everyone's in one central metropolis where everything's within 15 minutes, pretty much. In Jersey, everything's spread out. It's a suburban place, so to get people to live events, especially for the learning events, the weekend events to Shabbat was a lot easier. But for a live event or even a social event or a learning event, whatever it was, people are more reluctant to get out there, especially after a whole day of work.
Yeah.
So in that sense, our attendance has more than doubled, and to our classes and everything. And that coupled with the fact that people are looking for something. I mean, how much Netflix can you binge watch already? Like after hour number 6, like all right, maybe I should like do something better with my time.
Yeah.
So looking for something spiritual, looking for something meaningful is something that I feel that people are looking for, and kind of we've seen a lot more traffic probably because of those reasons.
Hmm. Do you foresee keeping up some element of the online classes going forward, even when social distancing is laxed?
That's a great question. We just had a staff meeting last week, and we're all pretty much in agreement that, yeah, things will not be the same after this. We definitely plan on doing a lot more virtual stuff, especially the classes. We find that the classes, it's such a good medium for it. Obviously, you have to contend with the fact that you're not in person, and people have as we say, the Yetzer Hara, the urge to kind of click on something else on the computer, or something else comes up. So that's of course a challenge, but at the same time, there's definitely things are not going to be the same after this, and we plan on doing a lot more things via Zoom.
Yeah, something, I spoke to somebody who goes to your classes, and a good friend of mine from college, Sam Snyder, and he mentioned that, one of the benefits of the Zoom classes is that he's able to join them because he's, in South Jersey, and, some of the in-person classes all the way up in Jersey City or North Jersey are, a long trip from him. So the fact that he can log on instantly and be a part of the class has been, great for him. So I certainly see the benefit of doing the Zoom classes in addition to in person, after this.
Yeah, and also another aspect of that is we're able to access speakers from anywhere, whereas before
Right.
we had to have this. It was an in-person event. You had to schlep a speaker out. He had to live in Jersey somewhere. If it's coming from New York, you're gonna have to pay for it.
Yeah.
And it better be really good if you're gonna do that. And most of the time we said, like, I'll just give the class myself. It's too hard. This way, you have so much more access. We had we had someone from Los Angeles speak for one of our classes, someone from Israel speak for one of our classes.
Oh.
No problem. You don't have to schlep them all the way out. So that's been a great thing working for us.
So something you mentioned, it can be a little difficult sometimes when there's other distractions on the computer and whatnot. So, what has been that process of keeping students engaged during the Zooms?
So for now, it's been pretty much speakers. We have to shorten our classes. We can't keep them, full length, a 45-minute class. People just don't have the attention span when, like you said, we're faced with all these other distractions. So we limit our classes to about a half an hour. We throw in a social component. We have an icebreaker at the end of every class, and people divide up into little rooms. Ask them crazy questions, and they all just talk about it for 5 minutes, and then we switch it all up again, and they talk about it some more. We find that people don't. There's not really any system for socializing anymore. You can't go out to the bars. You can't go out and hang out. You can't go to a ball game. So we're kind of finding that together with, obviously we offer Jewish learning and education, inspiration, all that. But just simply to socialize, to get to see other people in real time is an opportunity that we provide also, that we find that, wow, we're the only show in town, kind of, so to speak, because it's kind of tough to organize everyone and get together. So I find that that's something exciting, something we're offering. Something on the horizon also we're thinking about is speed dating. I've seen them in other people doing speed dating, little Zoom rooms of people speed dating for 5 minutes, 10 minutes at a shot. So we're looking into that also. But like I said, these are opportunities that have kind of just presented themselves due to this whole disaster. Obviously, it's not a good thing.
Right.
But at the same time, it's just really cool to kind of just navigate and all these new opportunities, which no one else is doing, because we're all at the beginning of this, so. it's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that is cool. It's true. The social element of it is so big, especially for people my age. And I mean, of course, everyone wants to socialize. Humans are social creatures, but I
Yes.
think for, young professionals, people who have just graduated college, they're looking to expand their social circles and also keep up some of the old ones. And that, of course, has been incredibly difficult during these times. So having a routine in a weekly class where you see, similar faces, old faces, new faces is a wonderful thing. And, I guess that kind of does answer the question a little bit. People are willing to stay engaged and, be present because this is the best social game in town. This is the chance to connect with people. So I think
Exactly.
yeah. So something my friend Adam Chanis mentioned in episode 6 of the program was the connection between the root of the word bidud, quarantine in Hebrew, and the connection to a certain Hasidic meditative practice. I'm wondering, are there any other connections you've thought of or recognized, either linguistically, theologically, or religiously?
Oh, that's interesting. I talked about before Pesach. Obviously this whole thing hit us right before Pesach. So one of the ideas I mentioned was that one of the ideas of the matzah is freedom, right? It's eating matzah on Passover symbolizes freedom because we had to leave Egypt and quickly take all of our belongings with us, and that was the bread of freedom. But it's not really. I mean, it's not really a rich man or a free man's bread. It's not the most elegant thing, much the most sought after, desirable thing. Matzah is kind of known as cardboard. So what's up with that? It doesn't have a chance to rise. People generally prefer their bread to be a little bit fluffy. Not the matzah type. So what's up with the freedom? And many of the commentators, I mean, obviously way earlier than COVID, but mentioned that the idea of the freedom of the matzah is that you get down to your core components. By just having the flour, the water, none of the other fluff, none of the other stuff, we kind of get down to what it's symbolic of is getting in touch with who we really are as Jews. We strip away all the other stuff symbolized by the rising of the dough, so to speak. That symbolizes our distractions, all the things that pull us away from our core mission in life. So I think, in a sense, COVID has really done that for us because, we're all stuck here in our homes with just basically in our bedroom staring at a computer screen. Like I mentioned earlier, how much Netflix can you watch already? How many distractions can you focus on? At some point, a person is going to ask the questions, what am I doing here? What's my purpose? What is my purpose as a Jewish man or woman? All these questions start, in any human being's brain, they start going through them and they're wondering about that. So in that sense, I see this whole experience as something which has forced each of us to get in touch with our true selves. And, in Judaism, we view that as freedom. That's truly being free when you're able to understand what drives you, what you're all about, and what your mission is. That's freedom. So I think in that sense, while being simultaneously locked up in our houses, we're also, all of us to our own degree, we're experiencing some degree of freedom, in the sense that this opportunity, this time has given us the space to kind of explore those things, think about them and what they mean to us.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. I think that's a beautiful analogy, and one that still holds up even though we're a few weeks past Passover. But yeah, no, I mean, this has definitely stripped us down and kind of made us examine the core elements of our humanity and what we're doing with our time. And certainly, that was something I was thinking about early on because you want to put pressure on yourself to achieve great things and to spend this time well, but then you don't want to you don't want to create expectations that aren't realistic, and you want to give yourself the room to take in the disaster and really try to contemplate what's going on. So it's always been a little hard for me to know what's the right thing at a given moment, but I've tried to find that balance over the course of this.
Yeah, and just the the routine I find is very important. I find for myself to have a routine where you're not just rolling out of bed and wearing whatever and like we talk about the Seder. The Seder is such an important part of Jewish life, but in general, Seder, which means an order of things, a routine, is such an important part of life. And kind of in Judaism, it has its built-in daily Seder. Forget about Passover. It just has the Seder where you have a prayer. This is what you do when you get up, and this is the time where you prioritize. The first thing when you get up, your mind should be on Hashem, on God. And then there's certain things you do before you eat. You should pray. There's certain things where Judaism kind of maps out for you a Seder, which, especially in these times, I think people appreciate it a lot more.
Definitely. Yeah, the order and the ritual of regular life is important, and shown to be even more important in a time like this, where everything else is seemingly by the wayside, right? People's calendars are completely clear, and they can easily get lost in the fray of just time. So, there's a big emphasis on charity and helping the poor in Judaism, and now is as important a time as ever for that, with poorer folks being at a real disadvantage when it comes to internet speed and connected devices. Have you seen a response to that from Jewish leaders, and maybe do you have any recommendations for ways people can help?
Well, we actually started a volunteer initiative to go shopping for older folks, people who could not get out of their houses, and a number of people volunteered for that. But just in general, it's something that we have to have other people in our minds, whether it's financially assisting people. Obviously, poor people can't afford things. Right. But even beyond that, the Torah says that chesed doesn't have to be with money. I think the most readily accessible chesed that we could do and we could think about is to think about other people. I'm blessed with 6 children, so I'm not lonely. I'm going nuts. I'm slowly going insane with having no personal space, and I have a couple of daughters in my 6 by 8 foot office right now with me as we speak. So that's a different challenge, but loneliness is definitely not one of my challenges, and truthfully, I would definitely take my current crazy situation over loneliness. That's for sure. But there are so many people out there, and not just young people, older people don't have families, or older couples just alone, and the monotony that people have to face. I feel so blessed that I am going through this, this stage that we're all going through at this stage of my life, where I have a lot of people around me. I'm young, I'm in relatively good health, and I'm not lonely, and thank God I'm employed. I say to everyone, if you have those 3 things, if you are healthy, employed, and with others, then you are you got it made, man. That's it. You got the triple blessing, and you cannot complain at all, because those are the 3 most important things to get through this whole situation. But there are so many people out there who don't have one or multiple of those 3 things, and I really think it's each of our obligation to reach out to people. Make a list of 10 people who could use a phone call, just use checking up on. I just, my mother, I feel terrible. She's 80. She lives by herself. We visit her and we can't go in the house. It's such a terrible. So we all make sure that we're calling her daily. Each of me and my 3 other siblings, we're calling her daily, having video chats with her. But it's not just obviously our own family. I have so many students I have a couple of medical professionals in the Mesorah group. One of them contracted COVID, unfortunately. So I just made a few phone calls to her friends saying, hey, listen, she's sick, and maybe you could get in touch with her. We made some meals for her. The point is that to think about other people, think about their situations, think about people, especially those who are alone. It really is something that we could do so easily. Everyone wants to hear from us now. Right. If anyone, if you text anyone, no one's going to say, like, why are you texting me? It's like totally different.
Yeah.
In the Jewish calendar, there's one day on the Jewish calendar where you could just barge into anyone's house, say, hey, what's up? Let's have a l'chaim. That day is Purim, right? Purim, all the barriers of Jewish life that we normally have set up for us are gone, right? You could just walk into anyone's house, say, hey, what's up? And no one will ask you a question. What are you doing here? Why are you in my kitchen? Why are you pouring some of my vodka? What are you doing? It's Purim, man. Come on. I'm allowed to do that, right? So this time is like Purim. This time, this COVID time is like that time where all the barriers are down and we have to kind of just readjust our paradigm. We have to have a paradigm shift about all of our relationships and kind of re-engage in that.
Yeah, that's it's interesting to compare it to Purim because Purim is a joyous time, and obviously now isn't a joyous time, but absolutely the barriers are down. And speaking to those three characteristics you mentioned about being employed, not being alone, being healthy, I am not currently employed, am living alone, but I am healthy, so I have one of the three.
Okay.
So, I've been doing my best to stay sane, and that was part of the reason I did this video series, was so I could actively engage with people and talk and have something to do that felt like a routine of sorts.
Well, it's beautiful, and that you're sharing it with others. I think that kind of engages them just by sharing it. I think that's a good thing. Well, Ruben, I think you definitely have a potential career ahead of you. You just send all these chats to the networks, and you have a future as a big YouTuber, man.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's definitely something I'm thinking about, professional podcasting or broadcasting of a certain type. I'd love to ask you one more question. I know we're a little tight on time, but the virus has been especially devastating for ultra-Orthodox communities such as the communities of Borough Park in Brooklyn, and that's in part because of the older populations and the close proximity of many Jewish traditions. And in the face of this tragedy, there has been compliance, but there has also been moments of rather blatant non-compliance. I'm wondering, what would you say as a religious leader to those who have still been trying to gather and have been breaking necessary social distancing guidelines?
Yeah. So whatever your stance on whether you do think it's dangerous to gather or you don't think to gather, it's obviously wrong to gather. If for no other reason than Chilul Hashem, and then making us look bad, even if that was the only reason, even if there was no danger and this whole thing was a hoax, okay? And that's not the case. Obviously, as we've seen as the results, all these communities have been hard hit.
Yeah.
But just to say one thing, it's a very small minority of people who have been flouting the laws. That's number one.
Right.
Number two, the reason the Jewish community has been hardest hit, I don't think it's mainly because we've been flouting the laws, flouting the guidelines, but rather it's because before all these guidelines became kind of known or taken seriously, Jews are social beings. We are more social than any other group, I believe. And especially when this whole thing hit, it hit around Purim time. Purim was actually the last big gathering that Mesorah had. I had a big Shabbos planned, the subsequent Shabbos. I believe Purim was on a Tuesday, and we had a huge Shabbos planned for that Shabbos in Jersey City. We had a big Purim party, but we canceled the Shabbos. So it was about that time where people started taking it seriously. And on Purim, as I mentioned before, Jews are very social. We have very tight communities. We have large communities. It spread like wildfire. If you're going to spread a disease, the Jews are the perfect community to put it in, because we're so social. We're always with each other. And on a holiday like Purim especially, that's when it just went crazy. So that's why the Jews were so hard hit. That's number one. As far as the Jews flouting the regulations, like as I mentioned, it's a very small minority. They're being chastised by other members of the Jewish community. And on a whole, I would say we're doing an exemplary job of kind of following those guidelines. But what I see, this is probably a topic for a larger discussion. All the anti-Semitism that has come out, this is really the perfect storm for anyone who has a deep-seated hatred of Jews. This is a perfect excuse for them to use it. So I see all these what really bothers me is when I see on social media people, Jews getting attacked by the New York Times or, insinuated as being the cause of this.
Right.
And then other Jews starting to throw, let's say Hasidim under the bus.
Right.
Listen, what the Hasidim are doing, going to funerals, it's 100% wrong, and we're all yelling at them for that. But when I see other people throwing them under the bus, they're really missing the larger point, whereas people would never talk about, let's say, the Asian community, the Black community, whatever community. You would never throw the words with the freedom that people are able to throw around. The Jewish community is blank, right? People would never use another community in that context. So the same standards I feel should be applied. It's something that is really a hot button for me when I see that. It really bothers me a lot. And you have to call out. You have to call out negligence when it's there. And I'll be the first to say it's wrong to attend these large funerals. It's terrible. I don't know what they're thinking. But at the same time, we have to be very aware that it is being used as an excuse for anti-Semitism, and we have to be very sensitive to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the fear of this being used as a catalyst for anti-Semitism is scary, and that brings up, just lastly here, the Mayor de Blasio tweet on April 28th. I don't know if you saw that, but he essentially called out, right. So he essentially called out, the entire Jewish community as opposed to those who were specifically doing something wrong. How did that hit you? Did it feel like anti-Semitism, or was it just an ill-advised tweet?
So again, it's probably an ill-advised tweet, but the point is that here's the question that we have to ask. Would Bill de Blasio or any elected official, let's say there was a big gathering in a Black neighborhood, okay? And there was a house party in a Black neighborhood, which there actually was on like the same day. But that's not the point. I'm not saying, we should call it, would they use the same language? I am calling on the Black community and all communities to stop, to be careful about social distancing. Would he ever, in 100 years, use that same language? That is the question we have to ask. If the answer is no, then yes, it's anti-Semitism. If the answer is yes, okay, he's being consistent. That's just his style. He's not so PC, whatever, and I'm willing to forgive that. But if the answer is no, that means there's a double standard here, and that means we have to call it out.
I agree. We have to call it like we see it, but then also try to deduce really, what's behind it, and would he say the same things about other communities? I mean,
I believe that is the litmus test.
Yeah, it's important. Well, I would love to keep going, but I know you have another meeting at 1 p.m. So I'll let you go. But thank you very much, Rabbi Lewis. I really appreciate it.
Ruben, this is a lot of fun. Thank you very much for having me on.
Absolutely. Great talking with you. Good Shabbos, and continue to stay safe and healthy.
Thank you, my friend. Good Shabbos.
See ya.